Hello, this is Dan Henk, and welcome to another edition of the Skull Sessions. And today, my guest is Jennifer Ann Gordon. Is that correct? Did I get it correct?
That is correct. You did it.
So, Jennifer, what do you got going on?
Hey, well, first, Happy New Year. Thanks for having me. Um,
I
yeah,
just
I'm
figure
Jennifer.
it's 1 year closer to death.
1 year closer to death. I mean, it's very true. So yeah, I'm Jennifer Ann Gordon. I am a horror author. I also write kind of speculative memoir, creative nonfiction as well, and just dark fiction in general.
Okay. And so, what do you have out right now?
Well, my latest release, I even have it with me, is called The Japanese Box and Other Stories. This came out in August, and it is a collection of short fiction and a little bit of poetry.
Are they kind of based on like Japanese myths and like legends and
Um,
fables?
it's not actually. The Japanese Box itself is the title story, and it's that got its name from this box that my father gave me when I was a child. And what started as a personal essay about my dad, uh, it got so personal that I was like, I have to fictionalize this because it's too real. So of course I added a ghost and I added all this weird stuff, and it kind of centered around this box that um, sometimes had things in it that the main character didn't recall ever putting in there.
Okay, awesome. So is that kind of like the like I did like an anthology and I was like I tell people everything in it is kind of like a Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Tales from the Crypt, base. So like not every story is the same, but they all kind of follow that theme. Is that kind of what you were thinking, or is it wildly divergent?
Um, you know, there are all yeah, I was going to say they're all pretty similar except for one. They're very personal. I tend to write like psychological horror and things where like you'll be reading it going, "Oh, this could be, is this character suffering from mental illness? Is this character um being haunted by something otherworldly? We don't really know." So a lot of the stories are psychological horror like that, very personal, dealing with things like trauma and all the fun stuff. But I do have one story in there that is very, very dark comedy, and that one's probably the one that is not similar.
So when you say psychological horror, because it kind of means different things to different people. I know that authors hate to do this, but if you had to compare it to something else out there, so people would be kind of familiar with the rough territory covered, what would it be?
I would probably say closer to like Shirley Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I know she was writing, like more gothic and psychological horror, but so yeah, it's not big on gore. It is slow creeping dread
Well,
and atmosphere. And
is it kind of like a like my favorite is like the Richard Matheson style, like that older, like build up the backstory, and then
yeah.
the tension slowly builds up. So you're like, what the fuck?
Yes,
As
exactly. I
opposed to
love
like
Richard
boom, gore
Matheson.
right in your face. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love Richard Matheson. So yeah.
So that's kind of what you're thinking, like building up that way. And
Yeah. I mean, because it's short fiction, um, the build isn't kind of as obviously it's not as long as like when I write my novels, they are definitely a slow burn. And
okay.
until you get to the end and you're like, what the is happening here?
Uh, I think I just thought of it, it just came across my mind, so I thought I'd mention. I think kind of like the modern incarnation of Richard Matheson would be like Neil Gaiman.
Yeah. Oh, I love Gaiman because he really writes everything, which I
Right.
absolutely adore. Like everything from horror to dark fantasy. Um, he does it all. He's brilliant.
Well, I think he has a great flow too. Like I've been following since the Sandman days, and
Yes,
I remember he had cool stories, but just the way he tells the stories have gotten so good over time. He could almost talk about nothing. And he'd be like, "I'm in."
exactly. Like he could just read a phone book and I would just be like, okay, just yeah, he can do no wrong. And was a huge Sandman fan. Every few years I reread it in its entirety. I love it.
Well, I think the early Sandman better. It feels like he kind of like maybe got kind of distracted, like his novel career was taking off. But like the later Sandman is not as concentrated on like horror stories. It's more like
Hmm.
kind of like the all the family relations and the connections and whatever. It's like I think his strength especially is telling great short stories or
Yeah,
great stories. Period. Like Neverwhere is amazing. You know, the Ghost Yard book. I don't know if you read the
I
Graveyard book.
did.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love House at the end of the
How's
no,
that
the
at the end
ocean
of the
at the end.
lake? Oh, it's at
Yeah,
the end of the lake. Yeah, that's the new one. Yeah, it's awesome.
really
Uh,
good.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. And that's one where I was reading, I was like, wow, his writing has gone so good. Because he'll talk about stuff and it just flows. There's none of
Yeah.
that kind of like awkward. You're like, okay, they kind of took me out of like the mood or whatever. But
Hmm.
all right, so let's talk about you. So we're talking about Neil Gaiman because I'm sure he
And
has
I'll talk
plenty of
about Neil
opinions.
Gaiman all day.
All right, so what the compilation is what we have coming out right now? Is it already out? Is it
It's
coming out?
out. It came out in August. I also have a few other novels that came out before that. My debut novel came out back in 2020. It's called Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent. It won the Kindle Award for Best Horror Novel of 2020. I also have a book called Pretty Ugly that came out in 2022, I think, which is a dystopian fiction, again, uplifting.
Do you do more like dystopian fiction, kind of like The Stand or like a
Yeah,
swan song or something like that, or do you like involve something in it, like kind of like like the alien invasion, whatever? Like what do you?
no,
How
it's
do you
definitely
approach
more
it?
like The Stand. It's a Pretty Ugly is definitely like The Stand. I mean, in theme, it is about. Unfortunately, it's about a virus. I was writing it before COVID, and then COVID happened. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna think it's about this, but it's basically about a virus that makes people's faces rot off, and it follows an Instagram influencer and a failed politician as they're kind of navigating through the end of the world.
Cool. Yeah, I knew some. Right, like my last, full book that came out was called The End of the World, and right when COVID hit, all of a sudden sales shot up. It's like, but the sales of everything apocalyptic or dystopian shot up.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I remember. I remember because I was like, yeah, lockdown happened and I was like, I had a book bub deal for one of my books and I was like checking the bestsellers list, obviously, like crazy all day. And for like so much of that day, it was like my book and Stephen King's The Stand were like number one and number two. And I'm like, well, I can't beat The Stand.
right. Well, I heard because everybody talked about The Stand so much, and I just want to be different. So I read Swan Song, and people were like, "Oh, well, you should pick one or the other and read it." I'll probably go back and read The Stand because everybody tells me it's so good. But have you read Swan Song?
I haven't read Swan Song. I have read The Stand 3 times though.
It's really good. You enjoyed it?
I did. I really did. I read it, back when I was a teenager, maybe when I was in college. And then I read it again a few years after that. And then my husband and I listened to the audio book together when we were moving from the Midwest to New England, where we live now. Lots of driving back and forth. And
Uh,
we listened to all 40
where did
hours
you
of
move
it.
from, and where did you move to?
We were living in Columbus, Ohio, and now we live in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire. Very rural, uh, lots of woods in a little town called Deering that nobody's ever heard of.
Why did you move?
This is originally where I'm from, New Hampshire, not this town. And yeah, really just wanted to go back home. And it's beautiful here. I love it. And I do miss the low cost of living that the Midwest had, though. Like, it's definitely more expensive here.
Yeah. But it's a little bit more rural, so like you feel like you have a little more freedom.
Oh yeah. And I mean, like we can't see our neighbors. We live in the woods. It's,
Yeah,
it's
that's
it's
awesome.
nice. It's nice. Like sometimes we look outside and we're like, "Oh, there's a bear or there are moose in our yard."
Yeah,
So, so
I,
we
I
went from,
lived in
living in a city to this.
I lived in essentially a log cabin for like a year, like on acre of property, and I thought that was amazing. But unfortunately, like you're not near anything, so
Exactly. It has its pros and cons. Like when we want to order food, we can't because there are no restaurants anywhere and
right.
we don't even have a gas station in our town. It's definitely at least a half hour to get anywhere.
Going back to the sand for a minute, did you see the Bernie Wrightson illustrated version of the sand? It's like Stephen King, but it's he did the illustrations for it.
Oh, I haven't, and I love Bernie Wrightson. I am a huge fan of Bernie Wrightson. His Swamp Thing illustrations back in the day are gorgeous.
Well, I think all of his stuff is amazing. He's a huge inspiration on me. Like he did like all those like horror magazines, like House of
Yeah.
Secrets, whatever. And like if you see a lot of his early work, it's really strong. But I know that he did this is kind of disappointing. Like I saw him at Monster Mania and he had a booth there, and I was like, oh man, I'm a huge fan, love your work, blah blah blah. And he was like, he did an illustrated version of Frankenstein. I don't know if you saw it, but like
Yes,
the drawings are amazing. They
they're
blew everyone
gorgeous.
away. And, it took him 3 years to illustrate that. And like he was selling the originals as he did it just to pay the bills. And it was the most depressing thing ever. He's like, I realized after I did that, that was the best I was ever going to do. So, I just give up.
You're like, don't give up. Um,
And
I
then he
actually,
came back, and like when he
yeah,
came back, that's when he did the illustrated version of the sand, which is still really good. I mean, Bernie Wrightson on his off day is still better than most artists. So,
of course, of course, yeah. And I actually, I used to own a comic book store, and we had a framed piece from the Frankenstein, an original. We owned
oh
one.
wow, I'm sure that's worth crazy money now. Did you
I
sell
don't
it?
have it anymore.
Uh, Yeah, an original page by Barry Winston Smith. And I remember I bought that for like I think like I saved up forever and I bought it for like no $125. And to me that was a fortune, but this is also
Yeah,
like 89. And then at one point I was broke and I sold it. You know what's that same page? I've seen it because I looked it up. That same page is 5 grand now.
I know. Like when I kick myself, I had a lot of original art, but I mean, as you know, like starving artists, you buy these amazing things, and I always tell people, I'm like, well, when you own a comic book store, you can never really keep everything you own.
Yeah.
Everything's for sale. So I don't own any original comic art anymore. But
Yeah, an original comic. I remember the first appearance of Wolverine. You know,
oh, good.
and
Yeah.
now that'd be worth so much money, but of course they sold it for way less. But you know,
Yeah.
um, all right. So you said you have a back catalog, but you initially owned a comic shop. So what got you started writing stories?
I think I had the original idea for Beautiful, Frightening, and Silent way back when I was in college. I had this core story, and I thought I was going to write a play, and but then I realized like I wanted it to be this like slow burn ghost story, haunted house, and it wouldn't have really worked at that time as a play because I wouldn't have had the resources to make it look as good as I wanted to in my head. So it went from being a play, and then I dabbled with it years later. I thought maybe it's a graphic novel, maybe it's not like, but I couldn't find the perfect artist for it. And then eventually, I feel like the story got it was just like I was tired of it being in my head. I had to get it out, and so one day I just sat down and I thought, okay, maybe it's a short story, maybe it's a novella. I didn't know. And that's how my first novel was born.
Okay, and I remember like when I wrote my first book, I thought the hardest thing is going to be writing it. The hardest thing is actually getting someone to publish it.
Yes.
So how did you go about that, and what did you pick as a publisher?
Well, it's a publisher that is no longer in business, thankfully, and I can't really say too much about that, but I did go with a small press. Um, and then
Yeah,
they
there are
obviously
probably a couple
went,
you could talk shit about that are like really bad, like damnation books.
yeah.
I can't say no bad about them, but go ahead.
I know. I'm like, I legally can't say anything bad about them. Um, because I had to sign an NDA to get out of my contract.
Uh,
So, but they
at
were
least you
not
got
great.
out. At least you
I
got
know.
out. Yeah.
I got out before they folded. So I got the rights back and everything. So yeah, I was with a small press, and then I self-published because like the book was up for a bunch of awards, and I couldn't just have it nowhere. So I ended up being self-published. Um, and then the Japanese box and other stories is with another more reputable small press called Last Waltz Publishing. And I adore them. And then I have a book that's out on sub with my literary agent. So like I kind of do like a little bit of everything. But yeah, the finding somebody to publish your work is the hard, slow process.
Yeah.
And and I thought like when I finally got an agent, I was just like, oh, it's gonna be easy now. And I'm like,
What's your
nope.
experience been with agents? Because some people hate agents. I remember I ran myself by. The thing is, like, I originally wanted to be a comic artist. So, and I interviewed with like DC Comics and Marvel Comics, and that's right when they almost all went bankrupt.
Yeah.
So, like, everybody just wanted you to do their properties, and I said I won't do that. So, I started doing illustrated novels. But I remember it was really hard to get, you know, get it pitched as like a novel with some illustrations in it, because like I guess people consider that the thing of the a past era and not the current era or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's tricky. I mean, I love my agent and I let her kind of handle obviously all the business aspects of things. So I love that. Um, but it's just a different ball game. Like especially when you're writing and thinking of it going towards like the big four publishers. Like it's tricky because like I went from being very indie horror, just write what I want to read. And now there's just more people in the picture going, okay, let's think about writing in a more commercial way,
Right.
which is
Well,
tricky.
it's
It's
opened up a
tricky to do.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Jeff Strand was talking about is like when he first started putting out ebooks, people were like, "Oh, fucking ebooks, they're not real books."
Yeah.
Now they're like, that's one of the best selling venues.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely sell way more ebooks than print copies. Like I sell a ton of print copies right when the book comes out, and then after that it's like all
Is a drop,
ebooks.
yeah.
Yeah.
um, all right, so you're saying like you do a diverse array of stuff, or you don't stick with like one theme?
Well, horror is definitely having a moment right now. So everything I write tends to be like a little bit in the horror world. That being said, the book that I have that's like out on sub right now is more women's fiction with some crime and and just general weirdness, but no ghosts.
Do you think that like whatever events are going on in the world kind of influences people's takes on what they find to be the most like approachable, the most accessible, or what they want to read. Like for instance, like in the 80s, I remember most movies in the 80s, even if they were like a decent horror movie or action movie or sci-fi movie, they had to put some comedy in there. They're all
Yeah.
like kind of a lighter tone,
Yeah.
and as it gets more towards the present day, stuff gets darker and darker.
Yeah. And I feel like, and there's so much horror, really great horror that's out right now. Um, and and I think, it's been good because I think the industry is kind of seeing it as a very viable thing right now. But because horror for years has been the lowest selling genre there is, and now I think people are seeing authors having really great success with it, and it's opening up the world for other horror writers and queer horror writers, and it's amazing. And
Yeah,
people aren't afraid to go real dark now.
well, I think also people kind of went from the stereotype of like all right, horror is only like one dimensional, kind of like those
No.
old, like, like I like Lon Chaney and Boris Karloff and stuff like that, but like that was like very like simplistic compared to what's out now.
Hmm.
Like if you watch like the movie Martyrs, I thought the movie Martyrs was awesome, but it's like it's a complex plot that yeah, a lot of very dark, horrific elements, but it's not like boom, flash in your face, horror movie.
Right. No, exactly. It's yeah, because I mean, and I think like if I'm talking about horror films, I tend to like horror films the way I like my horror novels. Like I like them to be not necessarily in your face. Like really, really like subtle. Like my favorites are The Orphanage, The Others. I love The Little Stranger. So like and everything Mike Flanagan does is just perfect to me. So his version of Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, Follow the House of Usher, which just came out
Oh,
in
did he
October.
do
So
you
good.
saw the series Midnight Mass?
Yes.
So he has something to do with that?
Mike Flanagan is the writer and director of those. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I enjoyed Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
Um, I thought it was a Stephen King project, but it's not. Or did he endorse it or something?
He probably endorsed it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed it. All
But I
right.
think Mike Flanagan's going to be doing a Stephen King project for Amazon.
Okay. Do
Yeah.
you know what it is?
Um, I can't remember, and I should know this. Um,
Well, I'm sure it'll be everywhere,
it's going to be
with
great.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, hopefully, I mean, some of his stuff is amazing. Like, and this is even like one of his favorites, but like The Stand is my favorite movie of all time.
really.
Yeah, or not The Stand, The Shining. I'm sorry, um,
Oh,
but it's like Stanley Kubrick is a master. You know,
exactly.
so like I know that that wasn't Stephen King's, um,
Yeah,
happiest
he didn't like
moment.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I love like I like Stephen King and I like Stanley Kubrick. I
Hmm.
mean, it's hard to beat like Full Metal Jacket or Clockwork Orange or
Hmm.
2001. But yeah, but then like some of his stuff like The Mist was amazing. I even like Dreamcatcher, but I mean he's done some horrible one. Well, he probably didn't do one, but like Maximum Overdrive was horrible. Tommy Knockers
Yeah.
is horrible.
Oh, Tommy Knockers is so bad. So bad. I know it's hard to like read the Tommy Knockers and then read something like Salem's Lot, and you're like, how is one of them so good? And then the
Right,
Tommy
right.
Knockers is just dreadful. But I mean, look, he's written, 80 books or something like that, like crazy amount of, yeah, you're bound to have a couple clunkers.
Right, right. Well, I mean, even his clunkers probably outsell most other
Of course.
others, so it's fine.
Exactly.
All right, so let's go back to you for a moment. So some people I've noticed, especially like the more modern writers, especially the people who you know, I guess they independently publish or they do a lot on like kind of like the Kindle modern audience grab the reader sort of thing. They love to do first person. And I remember that was hugely looked down on back in the day. Like I enjoy first person because
So
I'm a
do
big
I.
fan of Lovecraft and Lovecraft used that and that kind of inspired me. But I know a lot of people look down on that, but now a lot of people do it.
Yeah, the books that I have published right now, I haven't done first person. Um, I have one story in the Japanese box that's first person. But again, the book that I have out on sub for with my agent is written in first person, and that was the first time I had done that. And I think there's a lot of first person in like the thriller genre. Thriller and crime is a lot of first person, I've noticed. And I think I don't read romance, but I heard that a lot of romance authors use first person a lot too. And
I
I
get
like it because I think it really it really puts you as the reader directly in the story. Um,
right.
but that's some people don't like that. But
Well, there's also, if you get technical about it, like it is actually a deep rabbit hole. It's like you can do present tense first person or past
mhm,
tense first person,
yeah,
and like pretty much like the things you just have to stick with one, otherwise you confuse people. But
Yeah.
I know present tense, first person. After a while, you're like, dude, is this over? I can't be on the edge of my seat. Every like you feel like you're on the edge of your seat. But so like the one where you venture into first person, is it more past tense and more present tense?
It's actually present tense. It's first person present tense. But it's not like it's women's fiction with crime, like a side of crime, I always say, but it's not a thriller, so you're not going to be really tense the entire time. But for me, it was important because it's very character driven that people really get inside my character's head, and I so hopefully
Okay,
it'll work.
and is that part of like a collection or anthology? Like it, my understanding is there's a shorter work of fiction. Is that correct?
No, the one I'm talking about uh is actually it's a full length novel. It's out on submission right now. So who knows if it's ever going to get published? I don't know. Um, but I do have one short story in the Japanese box that is present tense. I mean, first person present tense. Actually, no, that one's first person past tense. Never mind. I'm like remembering it. I'm like, I wrote it so long ago.
Right. Well, I can't, not get into his memory. My memory is horrible. So, like, people come up to me and say, "Hello, you remember me?" I'm like, "I met them 10 years ago." So, like in my
Yeah.
head, I'm going, no." But I'm like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" And like, I'll try and like do that, like like indescriptive, like dude or hey man or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get called out on it though, and I'm like, "Fuck."
Yeah. Like they knew I didn't know who they were. Yeah. So I've been a dance teacher for the past 13 years now. So I meet a lot of people. I've had a lot of dance students over the years. And I always have to remember that, like, I'm their dance teacher. So
Right.
they remember me. I've had, hundreds and hundreds of students. So when I'm like, it's hard sometimes to place people. Like, you're like, I know I've danced with you.
Well, I
Don't
have
know your
almost the
name.
same like kind of thing. I'm a tattoo artist, so I'll tattoo people, and then 8 years later, they're like fat. They have grew a beard, and they're like, "Hey, man, what's up?" I'm like, hi."
You'll probably recognize the tattoo, but maybe not the
Yeah.
person.
Well, they go, "Hey, you remember did this with me?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." But all right, so let's get back to you. So, where can people find your stuff? Do you have like a website? Do you have an Amazon author
I
page?
do. I do. I have an Amazon author page, but the easiest place to find me everywhere is to just go right to my website, which is jenniferannegordon.com. That will have links to my books on Amazon, bookshop.org, everything. As like my press stuff is up there. And yeah, jenniferandgordon.com. All my social media is there. I'm mostly active on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not on TikTok. I mean, I technically am on TikTok, but I don't do the TikTok.
Well, I
So
think
sometimes
like,
it's just videos of my dog.
well, I think like, because it's all videos is really what he gets across.
Yeah.
But I've noticed some people like Jeff Strand does. He did a imagining of Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Sees himself holding the book and he pelted by tomatoes. So I mean, there's clever stuff you can do on it.
Yeah.
I haven't figured it out, but I'm just saying there
Oh,
there
I
is.
know. I know. And people do so well with it. And I'm just like, oh, I guess to me, I'm like, I don't need another social media platform. Like, I don't have enough time.
Yeah, no, my girlfriend gives me shit all the time. She's like, "Oh, you do too much. You do too much." But all right, so do you have is it just books out? Do you have like, are you in anthologies? Are you in like like what else are you in?
Yeah, I don't do too much short fiction, but I do have a short story in the book House of Haunts that just came out with Water Tower Hill Publishing that came out in October. I have a few personal essays that are going to be out in an upcoming book called Letting Grief Speak, Writing Portals for Life After Loss by Diane Zinna. That's coming out in 2024 sometime with Columbia University Press. I'm not exactly sure when that's coming out, but yeah, I'm slowly getting out there with some short fiction.
So if people want to keep up on what you're putting out, should they check out? Do you have like a website, and that's where you have the latest info updated on?
Yep. Just go right to my website, jenniferanngordon.com, or follow me on Facebook or Instagram. The links for that are on my website as well.
Okay, awesome. And do you have anything else you want to promote? Like anything else you want to put out there?
Oh, I do host a podcast. It is called Vox Vomitus. I host it with the author Allison Martine. We are twice a month on Wednesdays, so you can find that also on my website and on Vox Vomitus on YouTube and on Facebook, where we talk to best-selling authors about what goes horribly wrong during the writing process. So we've been going strong for about 4 years now, so people can we do a lot of horror authors because I book the show, so I tend to book the authors I really like.
Okay, is it like a video podcast? Is it an
Yep,
audio
it's a
podcast?
video. Yeah, it's a video podcast. Then we upload the audio to like SoundCloud and everywhere. I don't do that part, so I'm like, I don't know where it ends up. But yeah,
Well,
it's
that's what I do with
video.
this. I
Yeah,
put it on YouTube and then I put it in a Buzzsprout and it like goes out to like 40 different
everywhere.
channels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like, and then it's just out in the world. But yeah, if people want, they can watch the video. Sometimes we dress up in crazy outfits and theme it up to whatever book we read. Uh, when we had Josh Mallerman on, we all just wore outfits based on the old TV show Twin Peaks.
Which is one of my favorite. I'm old, so I
I love
remember
it.
that came out, and I was like, it blew everything else away. I was
I
like,
know.
this is so
I was
good.
obsessed. I was younger and just like I fell in love with it. And so yeah, we all themed up our Twin Peaks. Ate pie.
Although I did see when it came back for like 4 episodes, I was like, ah, I'm not feeling it.
You
I don't
know.
know if you saw it when it came back.
Yeah, I didn't love it,
Yeah.
but
I'm a huge David Lynch fan, but I was like, it
mhm.
still didn't it didn't do it for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Classic Twin Peaks for me.
Oh, definitely. Well, that's kind of the way it is with everything, right? Like movies, whatever.
Yeah.
Like the first Hellraiser was amazing. Like part five wasn't
I know.
nearly as amazing, But all right. So is there anything else people should look up for you, or just keep up with you on the website and see what
Yeah,
you're up
just keep
to?
up with me on the website. Check out the podcast and yeah, everything's there.
And what the anthology is out, or do you have another project coming out like in the near future?
I don't have anything coming out really soon. Things kind of slow down when you start like being out on sub is a very slow, long process. So hopefully there'll be some traction there soon, but publishing kind of shuts down for the holidays. So hopefully I'll get some news soon.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jennifer, for being on this. And
Thank you.
do you have anything else you want to throw out there?
No, we're all good. Thanks for having me.